Welcome back to part 1 of the test positions on pin. There are 6 problems and let us start with explanation of the same. I also hope that if you have solved it, you have found no difficulty in getting the answers correctly. So the first one is from the game between Moiners and Squan. It was played at Amsterdam in the year 1999. It's white to play and win, and here the pin is brought about with the move rook a8, and now we find it's an absolute pin. The bishop on d8 cannot move because behind it is the king on g8. Now black has to make a choice. He has two squares, flight square, that is h8 and f8. He decides to go to f8 as h8 is bad, and now here we see white winning the piece rook into d8 to reach an elementary ending. Let us also examine what if he goes to h8. Well, that is bad. We basically reach a position of elementary checkmate with one rook. The final position, rook into d8, declares check and mate. Number 2 in this position is from the game between Koroshnoi and Chekover, and here the great Koroshnoi brought about a pin. In fact, black is a rook up in this position, but white brought about a pin here with rook d7, and what do we see? That the queen of black is pinned and it is going to be lost. Black tried here queen into d7, but then white went ahead, queen into d7 check, king b8. Problems are not yet over for black. We saw here king captures b2, and further threat in the offing with moves like, it's simple, of course, queen versus rook, and now here it's queen e8 is threatened with a double attack on the rook. At the same time, if rook moves away, the e6 pawn will be lost, and this of course it's an easy win, but white will be able to quickly conclude the game in his favor. Moving on to number 3, it's from the game between Fischer and Fine, and it's of course a miniature, and it was a blitz tournament, and amazing that how a great player in Reuben Fine was defeated by Fischer in just 11 moves. So here this position had come after a sacrifice on the f7 square, bishop into f7, when black had played rook into f7 and was expecting knight into f7, but to his surprise, Fischer played queen c4 and brought about an absolute pin on the f7 square, that is the rook. You can see that it is now attacked twice and defended only once, that is by the king. So we can see that black has no defense to the f7 square. Of course, Fine resigned immediately, but he can try, say, knight b6, attacking the queen, but queen will move away with attack by capturing the rook on f7 to go ahead in material. Number 4 in this segment is from the game between Ilivitsky and Guimar, played at Gothenburg, and what do we see? That there is already a pin on the board with queen on g7 pinning the bishop of white on g2. It's an absolute pin because behind it is the king. So how to put more pressure on this pin piece? Well, black can win with knight h4, and now what do we see? Suddenly a mate threat. So king has to flee, king f2, and black won with queen into g2. He goes a piece up. Not only that, here the pawns will also fall with checks in this position. So that is why we see black resigning immediately after queen into g2. Let us just go back to the start position and also examine knight e3 instead of knight h4. Well, this is not correct. Idea is the same. You are threatening mate in 1. But the difference between knight on h4 and knight on e3 is that knight on e3 is not protected and can be attacked by the king, by moving to f2. It means that king gets out of the checkmate threat and now attacks the knight. So it is not possible for white to play queen into g2, as white can regain material equality with king into e3. And he will, like can try knight captures g2, in which case he goes a piece up, but then his king is exposed. Here white has a good chance. He can play queen into e6 with dangerous threat. The king is in the open, and like this pawn also can become decisive. This pawn is under threat, and there can of course follow this idea of giving perpetual checks from f5. So maybe here black can try knight captures f4 so as to ward off the threat. There comes queen f5, knight g6, it's a double attack, and now white can start some initiative with h4 with the threat of h5, putting pressure on the pin piece. And I feel this game basically white should get away with a draw because of like the position of the king which is open. That is why you need to make a correct choice. Your selection of the candidate move, it should be knight h4, which means white is not able to get away from the checkmate threat with a tempo gaining move as we had seen with when knight was on e3, king f2 attacks the knight immediately. I hope you have understood the idea. Number 5 in this is a simple example of how to take advantage of a pin. It's from the game between Spassky, the 10th world champion, and Soderborg, played at Reykjavik in 1957. And here we see the pin on f7 pawn from the rook on g7. So basically this pawn, though it's defending the bishop, it's actually superfluous. It is not what we say a real defense. So white had no hesitation in capturing the bishop with his queen. It is not possible for black to play f captures e6 and bring his king under pin, king under check. It's illegal. So there is only one option: move the king to f8, and there follows mate with queen captures f7. Our concluding example in part 1 of the test series, it's a very beautiful example from the game between Van Poppel and Atkins, played in the year 1902. And let us examine what are the advantages for white in this position. So basically we see a pin here. The bishop on f7 is pinned, and white is hitting at this rook on e6. Now the rook on e6, imagine if the queen is not there on d6, white can immediately win it with queen into e6. But problem is that queen is the defender. As we have seen, bishop is not the defender, it is superfluous because bishop itself is pinned absolutely by the rook on f1. So here comes the idea to drive away the queen from the guard of e6. There came bishop b4, and what do we see? A pin. So the queen of black is pinned absolutely by the bishop, and now we find that there is only one defense to this threat, and that is by moving the pawn forward to c5. But white knew that if the queen is not there on d6, he can win the rook on e6, and that is why he continued the sacrifice. Bishop captures c5. Again continuing the pin and forcing queen captures c5. So now once the queen has moved away from the defense of the rook, there follows queen into e6 with a straight threat of mate in 1, that is queen captures f7 check and mate. And now we see that black has no proper defense. The queen rushes back to the defense. Of course, queen should not exchange. Whenever like your material down, idea is to complicate and hope for some miracle. That is what black is precisely doing, is not exchanging queens. And now you can win in variety of ways, but remember that to simplify the position is the best way to win. Simple, don't like complicate. So what we see in this example is that white is clear 3 pawn plus, and what he should do is that he should ensure that queen does not stay on the board. If queen is there, then funny things happen, like perpetual check comes, even the white king is exposed. So to avoid all this complication and win it in a simple way, white went ahead with queen captures f7, giving back the material. So there followed queen captures f7, rook captures f7. That means he has given his rook for a bishop, but that is fine. He had already won the same. And after king captures f7, what do we see? That white has a majority, is 3 pawns plus, clear plus, and also majority. For example, on the queen side, if you look, then white has 3 pawns as compared to 1 of black. And on the king side, there are 2 pawns as compared to 1 of black. That means a simple win. Here also not to rush, just centralize the start centralizing the king with king g2, and it will soon be converted into a full point. So with this, I take your leave for now and will be back with part 2 of the solutions on pin. Thank you.